This is a short story entitled Water Mommies. In the kitchen, Geraldine takes another drag of the Salem light and peeks at the red frame bunk beds in her neighbor's backyard. She makes it a habit to spy on them. They are in mourning. The mother, Hua, screams a lot. The father, Charles, left. The priest came by twice. On the third day of the funeral, the smell of fish oil had seeped from the mourner's kitchen into Geraldine's. The top mattress in the backyard is soaked through, and the Power Ranger comforters lie beside two life-size He-Man pillows on the toy box. The night before, it rained and rained. During the 2-minute periods when the rain slowed, she could hear the lonely sobs of their May. Everything in the backyard seemed just as she remembered it in their room. Toys scattered around the bed, wrestling men in falling positions on the top bunk. Smoke spirals through Geraldine's thick nostrils. It starts to rain again. She is one of their green toy soldiers, glued in one position. Instead of a walkie-talkie in her ear, there is a cigarette in between her lips. Her lungs need to feel alive because the morning is shifting into something colder, something grayer. The toy box sits a few feet from the bed. At 7:03 a.m., she counts the steps their maid makes to take the last of the toy soldiers. She notices how their clothes make a trail to the garbage, like grasping hands stretching across a river. Hua is giving them back, removing any trace of their existence from the house. At 7:14 a.m., Geraldine watches how her foot gets tangled in DeLuca's red shirt as she carries both toys and clothes on a serving tray to the garbage. She stumbles a bit, but maintains balance nonetheless. She has a hard, motherless shell with sharp edges. At 7:19 a.m., the rain beads off the bed railing and the window ledge. Their maid stops near the bunks and makes a motion to touch, but doesn't. She starts to cry. At 7:21 a.m., Geraldine, from her kitchen window, observes the downpour from the window and wonders if their tears are real. Because how can a woman who never felt like a mother mourn? 3 weeks ago, the boys waved goodbye. Charlie, DeLuca. On September 4th, they snuck into Geraldine Brandt's backyard and drowned themselves. They stood hand in hand at the edge of the pool and said, "This is for Gigi." Then jumped in the water, hands flailing, legs kicking. They knew how their mother kept their room clean. They were boys with too much messy. That's how she would say it, too much messy. Charlie felt bad when the kids at the school talked about her jumbled language. DeLuca didn't care. She was their May. They had to call her this even though she didn't like their questions or noise. They knew of her rules to sit still after school and eat Chinese broccoli, lentils, rice, pork, and coconut meat for dessert. They knew how sad she was about missing Vietnam, and at the age of 4 tried to find it with a magnifying glass in their backyard. The boys knew God gave them their May, but they loved their Gigi. She played with them. For their 6th birthday, she bought them fake worms to put in their May's rice bag. They knew their May wouldn't laugh and that she would call them bad cinnamon worms, but they did it anyway. On their 8th birthday, Gigi bought them He-Man pillows. The boys didn't know who He-Man was, but wrestled with him anyway. The boys knew Geraldine wished they were hers. She told them once, "We should all run away." The boys said they would go. But on the day when they packed book bags with underwear and green toy soldiers, Geraldine just laughed. The boys knew she thought it was all a joke, that their maid wouldn't like that, and that they were too little to play with anymore. For 2 days, they whispered to each other how they hated her, how they would make her pay for her tricks. Charlie didn't say much. He always used DeLuca's mouth. The boys knew the water mommy lived at the bottom of the pool, and she would show Geraldine where they belonged. They knew this woman loved them, but questioned why she never took them away. As the boys flailed and kicked in the pool, they didn't know their maid was in the kitchen stirring duck soup, and that their father was in New York raiding a hotel, or that Geraldine at Smokey's Bar and Grill laughed so hard she choked from her own saliva. All they knew was that they loved their neighbor and wanted her to be theirs. In the water, Charlie and DeLuca grew tired as their mother stirred in the broccoli and noticed the bug on the leaf, and as Geraldine choked so hard she almost cried. The boys knew the water mommy would reach them, just as their Gigi said she would. She resisted to stay afloat and persisted to the chlorine water to rush into their nostrils, fill their lungs, and sink their bodies. This was 3 weeks ago. Geraldine loved the boys as if they were hers. She would babysit them on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays after school. They had karate on Tuesdays and family day on Fridays. Patrick told her to have the pool drained during the fall months, but she liked how the ducks would wander over from the park and float around in it, making it murky like a lagoon. The boys were 9. When they were 4, they found her sprawled out on the grass in her backyard blowing bubbles in the air. They liked bubbles and would sometimes blow with their Gigi. Hua didn't mind them spending so much time with their next-door neighbor. She did mind their noise, the chocolate smudges they left on her white Frigidaire, how they gave each other DDTs and made her watch. Geraldine liked it when the boys showed her these wrestling moves. Once tackled Patrick in the backyard and wouldn't let him up until the boys said he had tapped out. The boys were funny. They would plant fake worms in their mother's rice bag. Geraldine would take them to Jerry's trick store on Carmichael Street to pick out blood gum, dummy worms, and slime balls. One time she put slime balls in Patrick Stacey Adams. The boys loved her for that. When they told her their father about the slime balls attack on Mr. Brandt's shoes, he laughed. Charles had a sense of humor too. He was black. He liked to watch Mad TV with the boys on Saturday nights. He was a AAA inspector in the hospitality industry. He had met Hua at Northwestern University when they were both sophomores. She was an international student from Vietnam, and he was a volunteer in the Army Reserves. The boys hated whenever Charles had to go away on business. When he was gone, Hua would make them stay in their rooms and play if their Gigi and Patrick were out. 3 days after the boys died, Geraldine had the pool drained. She sat in a white patio chair with blue stripes that reminded her of intertwined seatbelts. She sat there waiting, watching, secretly hoping that the men Patrick had hired from A&P Pool Services would find something at the bottom of the pool or floating on the top amongst all the brown leaves and duck shit. Something to remind her of the boys. Patrick said she smoked too much during these days, that she was almost wasting away like a mother who had lost her children. She didn't care about hygiene, work, or wifely duties in the bedroom, but she was a mother, their mother, and that's what Patrick couldn't understand. How could he, when he was the reason she was childless? God didn't think Patrick would be a good father. Geraldine sometimes thought while fixing his eggs, scrambled with shredded cheese and Lorry seasoned salt. Maybe that's why when they tried for years to have kids, she would have these dreams about Patrick filling white bassinet nets with water that would overflow and soak into his white Aladdin slippers that curled to a point at the toe. Each time she remembered those shoes and always woke in a thick sweat wondering, why water? Why Aladdin slippers? For 3 years they tried. Geraldine thought about adopting and wanted her husband to think about it too. But Patrick said he could never raise a kid that really wasn't his. At first she moped around the house in silent protest. When that didn't work, she thought about artificially inseminating herself with good sperm. But when Charlie and DeLuca crawled into her life 5 years ago, she knew her babies had come. On the day they first met Geraldine, Hua wasn't sure if Charlie would go near the woman. DeLuca saw her first, and she knew that he loved her instantly. But Charlie was shy like his father. He was a good boy, but DeLuca would sometimes make him do bad things. He was brave, with those curious eyes. She always wondered how she could have two boys so alike, yet so not the same. The first time Hua held them, she wanted to give them back. How could she mother them? What was to be expected of her? Charles said motherhood was natural. It was an instinct, but she never felt it slide up her skin. Would she ever feel so much love that she wouldn't know how to contain it, like Charles said she would? The first time Hua was alone with them, two squirmy cinnamon worms with flat eyes, wide noses, and needle-like black hair. She didn't know what to do. After 2 days, Charles said he had to go back to work and that she would be okay. But when they started to kick and cry, Hua was lost. She stared down at them, feeling nothing. She wanted to run back to Long Swin so fast. She wanted to give them back. Charles' mother said, "Your boys are your life." She told her motherhood and babies were blessings from God. This woman had a lot of religion and faith and so much love for Hua's husband that she had to believe her. But maternal feelings never slid up her skin. When she first came to this country, Hua just wanted to learn numbers and go. She felt so alone here. Everything moved fast, and when the people talked, they talked fast. She missed her mother. She was certain nobody understood her because she didn't understand herself. On Sundays, she would take the red line to Surmat into Chinatown to have dinner with her Auntie 3 and Uncle 1. They kept a small general store on Archer Street, but had rooms in the back as living quarters. Hua's Auntie 3 had traveled to Chicago when she was 19 for school, but fell in love instead. She would write to Hua's mother telling her how America was so different and good, and how Chicago had small countries inside of it like Chinatown, Greektown, and Little Italy. Once Hua's aunt told how she asked her husband where Vietnam town, and he laughed. Her Auntie 3 would help her with English, and when the boys got their first teeth, she said they would call her their May and learn some Vietnamese. DeLuca was the first to speak to the woman. Hua wanted to see if Geraldine would shoo them away or blow bubbles in their faces. She took the wild and hairy but beautiful woman. Her deep curled hair was like a frame around her face. She stretched out on the grass, which seemed very long, with one arm buried under her hair, the other dipped in bubbles.